What is happening, everybody, man? Thank you guys for jumping into another episode of Expert Mentors Live. Sarah, what are we? Episode 327 of the Expert Mentors series. My goodness. Well, I am probably more excited than you are, or anybody listening to this conversation today, as being able to tap into, individuals that do hard things, and then being able to tap into the mindset and the thinking. I kind of like get excited about that, Sarah. I'm sorry. So I'm
glad you're excited, John.
I'm excited today to really unpack that. And anytime, you get an opportunity to have a conversation with anybody that's done anything at a high level, and you throw difficulty on top of it, and then you throw fighting on top of it, man, we all have so much to learn. So I'm really excited to unpack your story, and your journey in real estate has been remarkable in such a short period of time. And I know there's a lot of correlation in life before real estate and how you carried that into real estate. So Sarah, I'm going to let you kind of kick it off with, your story. Man, 20 years in fitness, competing, professionally in the MMA world as a fighter, stepping into real estate. Walk me through that transition, right? What made you, one, make the move in the first place, go from something as extreme? Well, I guess selling real estate can be extreme as well. So it's a different extreme. And what did you bring with you from all of the experience in the MMA world?
Yeah. There's so many similarities that I didn't realize were even similarities until I got started in real estate. And then I would be in the middle of a real estate transaction or problem or some experience along the way in real estate. And I would look back and be like, oh my gosh, this is exactly like this in fighting. I mean, for example, to walk you through it, you're a fighter, you're training every day. All of a sudden you get a call, you get an offer for a fight. So you sit down, you look at that fight, you look at, where is it at? Where am I going to have to go? That's going to make a difference. Am I going to have to train somewhere else? Am I going to have to leave my family? How early will I have to leave? Is it local? Is it in another country? Is it in another state? So you start kind of breaking down the details of the fight. Then you look at your opponent. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What's their record? Where do they train? Where could they beat me? Where could I beat them? You start looking at all these details, right? I mean, the same thing is true in real estate. Like, you get a new client, you break down, what do they want to do? Do they want to buy? Do they want to sell? Do they want to buy and sell? What type of property they have to sell? What's their timeline? Why are they selling in the first place? How motivated are they? So that's kind of like all your details of your fight is your details of your client. And then the next thing is looking at, when it's your opponent, it's like, okay, well, what is the market like? What is this? That's you're doing your CMAs. What is this house going to sell for? Who's our target buyer? Who's our target audience? Where they can win or where they can lose is can they get the money that they want or need to move forward? Is this the time? So all of that. And then in fighting, you don't get a paycheck until you fight. I mean, right. If the fight gets canceled 2 days before, you don't get a paycheck. You could put in all the work, your 8-week training camp, all that. Same with real estate. You could list the house, you could get it on the market, you can do open houses, you can market, you can do all of these things. And then maybe you get a contract, maybe you don't. Maybe the seller decides they don't want to sell, they pull it off the market. Maybe you get it under contract and you do all the work, and a few days before closing, the buyer backs out, or the buyer loses his job, or the buyer dies, or a million things that could happen. So that was the other thing that I found the similarity. I'm used to working hard, my very hardest, and then getting a paycheck. So I had so many people tell me, I would never do real estate because I don't want to work and not get paid for it. I'm like, God, I never even thought about it like that, because that's what I've been doing forever, is nobody really fights for money. There's a deeper purpose. There's a deeper thing. I don't think anybody really gets into real estate and succeeds. They might get into real estate for money, but they're not going to make it, in my opinion. You get in for a deeper reason, and then you do well, and money comes with that, of course, because real estate is very lucrative. But it's also, again, there's a risk that you're not going to get paid, that you're never going to get paid on that transaction, but you get up and you do it anyway. and then you get up and you do it again anyway. So
Yeah.
there were just so many parallels that I did not even, before I started real estate, I could not even put it into a timeline, similar parallels and stuff like that, until I started doing real estate. And then I really saw the similarities. So
Did you have any, I mean, 2 decades in anything, right? Our identity starts to wrap around whatever that thing is. Did you have any mental battles in kind of an identity crisis? Hey, I'm a fighter, to now, I'm an entrepreneur, business owner, and, I lead, my business is residential real estate sales, right? Did you have any identity issues in transferring over?
well, about a year before I started real estate, I shut down my business in Washington, and I had already moved to Texas. I tried to run my gym remotely for 1 year. It did not work. I failed miserably, wasted a lot of money, but I learned a lot, and that's what matters. It, I had my gym for 8+ years. I fought out of my gym, represented myself. I trained fighters that fought out of my gym and did very well. I had a whole very big women's following, kids program. It was all I did for 10 years, just that gym alone. And I ended up moving to Texas, tried to run it remotely, ended up shutting it down. That's where my identity crisis happened. That was probably, that was one of the hardest things that I've ever been through in my life that I didn't expect to be hard. I've lost a lot of people. My dad died when I was young. Obviously that was hard, but you expect that to be hard. I did not realize how much my identity was tied to that gym and everything that I had put into that, all the different hats that I wore in that gym, all my friends, everybody I saw daily. I was a coach there. I was a fitness instructor. I was a nutrition coach. I was all these things. And so when I finally made the transition to shut that down, that was the identity thing. Then when I got into real estate, everybody that kind of heard my story was like, oh, you got to run with that. You're the fighting real estate agent. And you're, I can't even remember all the stuff that people would come up with, taglines and this. And I was really like, no, I do not want to get my identity back in that, because I just climbed up from that crumbled pile of bricks. So just got through that. I don't want that to be my identity. But now 2 years in real estate, I'm kind of finding the balance between, it doesn't have to be your identity, but it does make you who you are. And it's a fun story to tell people. And it really is who I am. So it doesn't have to be it can be a part of my story without being my identity.
Yeah, I love that. And being able to intertwine it and kind of how you think about things, how you operate through things. And you have all of those experiences to be able to pull from, the wins, the failures, the examples of hard work. And you're like, I've done this before, I can do it again. And it's such a powerful tool set that you've built for yourself that you can tap into at any time. So Sarah, hitting icon your first year, right? Remarkable. Hitting that your first year, landing in top 1% nationwide with Veterans United. When did you realize the things that made you so competitive life before were the exact things required to accomplish, in such a short period of time, to be able to hit that status in your first year?
Well, I feel like sometimes I still don't know that the skills that I already have are, I'm not like tracking. I look back at my numbers and I have no idea. I did my first year with real estate, I did 16.3 million, and I had no idea. My goal was to do 1 million a month. Clearly there's not 16 months in a year. Clearly I beat that goal. But with that goal alone, I went back and forth. I'm so hard on myself. And when I set a goal, I want to achieve it. So I think like on 3 different occasions, I told my husband, oh, by the way, I'm canceling that goal. I want to make that clear. I'm not going to do that goal right now, because it felt so overwhelming for me to think that to myself, like, oh my gosh, $1 million a month. And so, but then I realized that I had already been doing that I need to pay better attention to my numbers. I'm not in this game, I'm not in this career, like looking at my numbers. When I was fighting, it was I showed up and I trained hard, because I loved it. It's what I needed to do. I was first one in the gym, last one to leave. As the coach, there would be times where we would have fighters, one fighting a month for 5 months. And I was in the gym training with them, working out with them, sparring with them for all 5 months straight, consistently dedicated. When the person who was getting ready for February, they would be there for the January, but then after they fought, they were gone in March. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like after they fought, they were out. And that was never me. I was always the one that was there because I was the coach, because I had that responsibility, because I did love it, because I who I am. So the same thing with real estate. You know, I can have a great month, 1 month, but we're still pushing the same in February, same in March, all of that. So the dedication, the consistency of getting up and doing the same thing day in and day out, whether or not you have a paycheck on the horizon or not, are what is making me successful. But I'm not necessarily tracking my success. If that makes my numbers, I don't ever know my numbers. I don't know where I'm at in Hopkins County. I don't know where I'm at. I never look at those leaderboards. It's just about what family needs me, what family, whose house am I trying to sell, and how can I get that sold for them? What buyer is looking? How can I find this perfect place for these people on a timeline? They got 2 months. We got to get them in before this. So it's like it's short term. I'm looking at each short term versus looking at the bigger picture on how my skills are making me successful. But at the same time, they're obviously making me successful.
So when you would go in the gym, you kind of had a plan. You knew exactly kind of what was required of you, what you wanted to, require of others. So when you got into real estate, I mean, that was just probably the day-to-day operation, and just, you don't know any other way. What was the focus and the plan with real estate? What were you focused on, day in and day out?
Like when I first started?
Yeah.
Well, I honestly, John, my goal was to just sell one house a month. If I could just sell one house a month, and I think a lot of people get into real estate saying that. Yeah. And then it either goes two ways. Either they don't sell one house a month and they don't last very long, or they figure out a rhythm. But like Cindy says all the time, Cindy's my mentor, what she says all the time is like, you build momentum. Mm-hmm. Like one house, you're going to get that other referral. Next thing you know, you're working on two at once. And, so that was kind of it for me. When I started, it was just, I just want to do one house a month. I'm going to help my family out financially. It's going to be this. I never imagined my career would go to where it is now. So that's originally what the focus started. But again, it's just...
the focus on one house, but what were the activities that you would focus on to get that one house? So, I mean, I'm sure you had a routine day in and going, I have, getting up in the morning, got the routine, going out the door, like, first steps in the first 5-10 minutes, right? Just kind of getting my body loose, and even going into the gym, right? We all just kind of default to a process. What was that default process for you when you started?
Well, I always start my day going to the gym. Even now, I'm still very consistent with that. I like to say I exercise the crazy off. That really helps me a lot in my personality. So I gotta do that. I gotta get my workout in. And then I would go to the office. No matter, I started in an office that was 30 miles away. I would go down there, sit in the office. And even I would call my husband and be like, I don't really know why I'm here, because I'm not working on anything, but I'm there in the office. I wasn't just waiting for real estate to come to me. I switched brokerages. I moved to one here locally. I would go into the office, sit in the office, find something to work on, whether you're looking at houses. I called a few FSBOs and expireds, but that never really was my thing. Tried it a little bit. And I just made myself available a lot on social media. I got a lot of leads off of city groups looking for a realtor. I need this, I need that. So I would reach out to them, send them a private message, talk to them. I got a lot of my first few clients that way, but those organic clients, they take time, a year or more to close, but I stayed consistent with them. I checked in with them. I created relationships with them. Even now, they're going to be lifelong clients, because in that year before they purchased, we made a relationship. They know my kids. I know their kids. I know what they're into. I know what they're interested in. So a lot of that was just follow up. And I consider that like putting money in my savings account. Like I didn't get paid on that. And we all got to get paid. It doesn't mean you're doing it for the money, but it wasn't like I immediately saw the financial gain from that. It was creating those relationships and following up. That's putting money in your savings account for the future. Eventually, it literally took until about the beginning of this year is when a lot of my organic leads started finally getting the place to sell. That was like a year and a half that I nurtured those clients and stayed with them and stayed top of mind. So just really following up with people, talking to people, reaching out. I went to a lot of local events. If our title companies had something local, if there was a meeting put on by Trek here locally, I'd go to that. I started going to all of the cheap CE credit classes just to meet people, to talk to people. I got in with some lenders. I got some referrals from lenders right off the bat. So I just made myself known. I got out there, but I treated it like a job. Even when, again, I did my training, even before I had a fight in the works. You're always training. Every day you're showing up and you're doing something, even if sometimes you feel like you're not doing something. You're there, you're going through the motions, you're sitting in your office, you're being a realtor, and not just continuing on with your day-to-day life and expecting that somebody's going to call you wanting to buy a house or list a house. So
a lot of discipline. Right. Yep. And you and I even talked about how, discipline beats motivation.
Yes.
Right. The whole 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. But what does that look like in practice? You gave us a glimpse of that, but what are you doing now to where you're consistent, even when you don't feel like it, that almost 97% of the agents skip?
I think a huge thing is showing up to the office every day, going to work every day. Whether you can work from home, I know I can work at home. I can sit at my table, but you know what? The dogs are constantly barking. I have to get up, go see who's at the door because the UPS guy just dropped something off. My daughter needs something. It's distracting. You're not getting nearly as much work done. So you get up, you get yourself ready, and you get to the office. And again, even if you just feel like you're going through the motions, you're here, you're being aware, you're being present in your business, and it's going to pay off. Time blocking is another huge thing. My big thing is time blocking at the office. My first priority, even above real estate, is my family and is my faith. I do not work on Sundays anymore. When I started, I would do showings or this because you have to get that going. But now I'm at a place because I have a team I can refer out, or I can say, hey, I really like to take Sundays for myself, for my family. Is there any other day? Is there any other time that we can look? If somebody absolutely had to look on a Sunday, of course, I would go Sunday afternoon and show. But those are kind of the days I reserve for myself and then my family as well. So when I'm home, I do not like to be on my phone or on my computer. I like to delegate that time. So when I'm at work, when I'm at the office, I really like to time block so that I know from 8 to 9, I'm following up. I start my day, the first day, with emails. That way, if there's any fires, I can put them out. If there's any amendments or anything, paperwork, we can get that going. Secondly, what we go into is calling and our leads. But it's all blocked out from 8 or 9, whenever we get here, to noon. And if we can be consistent in that and we can do what we need in that time frame, I feel like that is enough time for me to spend in the office doing office work. And then when I go home, I can be present and be available with my kids.
Yeah. And I know we're not ever 100% with that. What would you say kind of statistically each week? Is it about 70, 80, 90% dialed in on that?
Probably 80%.
Good. That's awesome. That is so awesome. And obviously then, hey, how can we get it to 82%? How can we get it to 84%? Right. You've got that, but without that discipline and, you made the point about working at home. Environment is everything, right? So if you truly want to maximize your productivity, you have to start with the environment. And I always, tell agents is that, if you just want to make 6 figures, you can really work from anywhere. It doesn't matter. Distractions or it doesn't matter. Right. I mean, you're probably going to make about 350 to 400,000 if you're good, by allowing distractions. But if you have bigger goals, if you have 7-figure beyond goals, you're not going to get there by working at the house with dogs and kids and the mailman and everybody interrupting you.
Right.
So if you got to kind of base that upon your goal. But it has to start with environment. And I love that you said that, right? I get ready and I prepared and I show up for work every day, right? That's the difference between an amateur and a professional. Professionals show up prepared. Amateurs just kind of wing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the business you came from prior to this, if you show up, just trying to wing it, it's not going to end well for you.
In your favor very well. No. And I can't say that I never would wing it. I can think of a few fights where they were a little more winged than actually prepared. And so I have learned those lessons, but you do the best that you can. Not every day. That's again, that 80%, not every single day. Sometimes I'm here in my workout clothes because I didn't go home before. So not everything is perfect, but it's the fact. And I used to say in fighting all the time, like if you rank every skill that a fighter has, their boxing, their kickboxing, their jujitsu, their wrestling, their endurance, their stamina, all these things, if you rank them, if somebody's 100 at one, they're probably a lot lower at something else. So if you have somebody who's really great at wrestling, really great at jujitsu, their striking is probably lacking. So if you can be 80% everywhere, you don't have to be the very best striker. You don't have to be the very best on the ground. But if you can be 80%, you can probably beat any one of those people who are 100% at something because you're better at their weakness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely makes sense. I was kind of laughing in my mind as you were going. I was like, listening and thinking, I was like, well, there's only one John Jones. So, there's, you have the unicorns, but for the mass, this is where you have to be able to develop that. Yeah, that's so good. So Sarah, let's keep on this with the training and the preparation. As you've carried over into real estate, what does the training and preparation in the real estate world look like for you right now?
Like training my new clients, training
the skill sets, being able to articulate your value, right? We were talking about, hey, what's your attraction system? What's your conversion system? What is that, system to where you're getting results? Where are you training inside of your business right now?
Well, I'm working with a few newer agents. And so just by being able to help them avoid the mistakes or teach them essentially the shortcuts that I learned 2 years in the hard way. I didn't necessarily have somebody that held my hand and walked me through the way that I'm holding my agent's hands to get them there faster. I didn't have somebody that said, hey, Sarah, this is the best way to do showings. This is what you should do. Whereas I've kind of from live and learn, like, hey, you're not going to, if you have a client who wants to show 15 homes, you're not going to set up 15 homes and show them all 15 homes in one day. That is not an effective way to do showings. That was how I used to do showings. But I didn't have that guidance. So learning what I've learned in 2.5 years, passing that on to my clients and making them, or my agents, making them more efficient, more effective, is one thing in my everyday training. As far as myself and for my business, we are training on, again, setting up processes and procedures. A lot of my training is focusing on that. And I'll be honest, it's like the wrestler or the jujitsu person who hates training striking, or vice versa. You got a boxer that hates jujitsu.
Yeah.
That's how I feel when it comes to sitting down at the computer and booking these things out. So this is where I'm forcing myself to get to that 80% on this level.
Yeah.
I'm 80% easily here, but there's always something that we dislike the most. Mine is the computer work, the processes, and the procedures. I am a doer. Let me get out, let me go, let me get the things done. But sitting and working on the backside is more challenging for me. So the big focus of my training right now in my business is getting those processes and procedures, my CRM, my filters, my attraction, all of these things, my follow-up. I need automated follow-up for my clients. Getting all that into place right now is my number one focus, even though it's the most challenging, and I feel like it's coming along the slowest.
Yeah. Because
I do not want to keep trying to build without having those things in place, because I don't want to lose prospects. They comment, you get online social media attraction, but you don't have anywhere in their funnel for them to follow up. You don't have a call to action. I need to get all those things set up. So that's really where my focus is and my training is right now.
That's so awesome. I was just, as you were talking, Sarah, I was like, man, what a great comparison in the MMA world, especially in the competitive MMA world that you come from. And like you were saying, man, you were just rattling off the disciplines And I start to think about, well, that's kind of like the functions of business, right? You got your head of company, you got sales, you got marketing, you got ops, you got finance, you got client experience. So it's 5 to 6 hats and disciplines you got to make sure you have in place, because if you don't, then that's where you're vulnerable. And in a combat sports, once I know your weakness, I know how to attack it. And that's the same thing that can, makes us vulnerable in our business. That's such a great way to draw the comparisons. And I mean, you've definitely tapped into it just with, your success in 2.5 years. You can see how that carries over very, very well for you. Has there been anything though, Sarah, that with that fighter mentality that has worked against you in real estate in the 2.5 years?
Yes, there definitely has been. I have to realize that it is not a fight with the other agent. It's not me winning or them losing. Negotiations are middle grounds, not one way or the other way. I mean, that is honestly in the beginning. I would love a good negotiation, like we're going to get it my way. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it never, I never lost a deal over it, but it's definitely, I've changed my perspective a lot, is like, we are deal makers. How can we make this work? We have to bend a little bit so the deal doesn't break. So it is really all about that. That was the biggest thing, is it's like, okay, you're not going to win this. If they pay $5,000 more for your buyer, your seller, whatever, it's still a win because they're accomplishing what they want. They're getting their house sold. The bottom line is, we want this house sold. How can we do that? So that was probably like my biggest adjustment. And when I started personal training, as a personal trainer as well, I lost so many clients by being too much of a hard ass. Like, if you're not going to do it this way, if you can't do it, then you can go find another trainer, because this is how it's going to be. This is how you're going to get your results. It was just too much. Where I looked back after being a personal trainer for 2 years and thought, gosh, I would have so much more money in my bank if all of those rich clients that I ran off, if we could have found a easier or a more successful for them way to reaching their goals. And so I have to kind of tone myself down a little bit.
Yeah. And it reminds me of, like, how do you know what type of negotiation you're in?
Yes.
And so you typically have a win-win, right? That doesn't mean equal. Win-win does not mean equal. It just means I get what I want, you get what you want. Mm-hmm. And then there's, I'm going to win, you're going to lose. Mm-hmm. And where we find what type of negotiation we're in comes down to, what's the relationship like? And when you don't care about the other person, you don't care about the relationship, that's where it becomes a win-lose negotiation. But when you care about the relationship, you want to preserve, you focus on lifetime value. You want this client for life. You want referrals from this client. You're going to be in this market for the next, 20 years, that I want to build relationships with agents in the market to where we can work together. And who knows, maybe they want to come work with me. When that shift happens, now you move more into a win-win type of negotiation, because you care about the relationship more than the thing itself. And that's just obviously comes with time, but it's also, you get caught, and I'm like, why does nobody like me? Why does nobody want to work with me? Like, why is this so hard? And it's like, oh, because I care about winning more than I care about, winning the relationship.
Right. And I think also the ability to have the conversation with your clients that way, like the relationship, hey, they really need this. I know, so I didn't have the skills quite yet to help my clients, to guide my clients to see that it isn't just a win or a lose. Like, we can find a win-win, we can bend on certain things. And now, before we go nose to nose over something, I'm going to talk to my client and see, like, hey, is there middle ground we can find here? Like, what we can do in this situation, so that we're not going nose to nose and potentially losing the sale. We want to be able to find something that works for everybody.
Yeah. So, and for you, you had that aha and you like, oh, okay, I gotta focus on the relationships, which you've done with your business. You've focused on the relationships,
Mhm.
not only clients, you've got, Cindy being a great mentor. She's one of the best in the world at bringing people together. I mean, she's built her whole career off of, food and connection
Right.
and really bringing people together. And I mean, you're running with the, the same, philosophy with your lenders, title inspectors, vendors, and you've been really intentional with that. When you made, like you said, you made that shift where I got this fighter mentality. I'm going to win. You're going to lose. No, we're going to win all together.
Mhm.
How quick did you make that shift? And then how quick did you see the results from that?
Well, I made it pretty early on.
Mm-hmm.
I I really have kind of being a coach in MMA for so long, you kind of develop the ability to reflect or look at something mid fight and say, oh my gosh, how do I need to adjust my fighter so that we can win this fight? What is he doing that my person isn't responding to? Or where is his weakness? What can we right now? What can we pick off to help us win? So, I felt it right away with the negotiations. And I talked to my husband about everything. He's like my biggest support system, and it's like, and also him and I are very different, right?
Mm.
He is not confrontational. He is not, so, and he's such a good listener and, really helps me through things. So, early on, I was like, man, I really shouldn't care so much about just winning a negotiation. Like that shouldn't be like the highlight of your day. It should be that we're on to the next level. We got through the option period. We got through the inspections. We got through this. It isn't like, oh yes, we got to win this and we got to win this and we got to win this, throughout the transaction. So I kind of just reflected on how emotionally I was feeling after that,
Yeah.
it is important to find win. And that's, I think, another thing in life, you have to find your own win. In weight loss, you're going to have little wins along the way before you get to your ultimate goal of 100 pounds lost. If you just wait to lose 100 pounds to celebrate, you're never going to get there. Fighting, you're prepping for a fight, you're learning a new takedown or a defense or whatever it is. You can celebrate when you start being able to effectively utilize that in sparring sessions or in training sessions. And you're like, okay, I'm adding more tools to my toolbox. I can celebrate that. So throughout the real estate transaction, there are places that you do celebrate. And so for me, winning a negotiation was one of those, and it should be, not that you should, you're getting through it, but it shouldn't be winning the negotiation is a celebration. It should be moving past that. We found neutral ground, we negotiated, we this versus a big win in the transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's those micro wins along the way,
And
right?
again, yes, that's all mindset. That's all those things that you're thinking. So finding wins throughout the way, but making it a little bit different. I just felt like it was more, it had more power than it should have, essentially. That it shouldn't be that big of a deal to me. That was letting my competitiveness and my ego get in the way. And it needed to be more where we found neutral ground, and I could essentially be putting my client at risk by going at it that way. We could risk losing the transaction versus making sure we're all happy. We all have a good relationship. Everybody feels fair, not feels like they're being pushed into something. So, and then as far as like how that changed, I hadn't really been in real estate too long to notice. It's not like I was doing it wrong for a long time or having that mindset for a long time, but I could just feel the shift in myself. And you're right, it does create better relationships. You are more comfortable with that other agent. You do have a better relationship at the end of the transaction with that relationship, because you came from it, not a point of I'm going to win, and when I win, you lose. It's like, we're going to win together. So
Yeah. It's trial and error, and fortunate enough for you, and right from the beginning of your career here in real estate, you figured that out, and some agents never figured that out. And one thing you said there too with ego, and it's my favorite concept, is outcome over ego. And outcome is getting to right, and ego is trying to be right. And I tell my team this all the time. I'm like, listen, I'm over here and just because, we're in a discussion type of things. And I'm like, I know I'm wrong, and I'm not trying to be right. I'm just trying to get us to right. Mm-hmm. And that just, once you can embrace that, you can move people a lot further, because you kind of get out of your own way, not trying to, protect, that ego of ourselves of always having to be right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really, really powerful. Hey, shift with me here for a second, Sarah. Let's talk about Veterans United a little bit. I'm curious why you chose, Veterans United to really take on that role. One, how come you chose that organization, that company? Also, do they take a rip off of every deal? And you got the Zillow stuff out there. You got a lot of the pay at closing referral type of opportunities. You in kind of the skill set you have, you don't have to do that to generate your business. You don't have to work the paid at closing companies, but you chose that. And a lot of agents don't choose that know how to generate business. But walk us through that decision. I'm really curious why you chose that organization and why you were okay with 35% coming off the top.
Well, one of my first clients, my first leads that I got, it was a seller lead. My husband and I were driving down the highway, and we pass a shop with a big sign on it and then a house. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, that was one of my clients, his patients. He was a chiropractor before this." And he's like, "That was my buddy Phil's house. He was going to list his house. He must still be there because his business, his sign is still up." I said, "Well, turn around. We got to go talk to him." So we flipped around, we went back to his house, we knocked on his door, and he obviously remembered my husband knew him, and he introduced me. Phil Gabbert is his name. He is a veteran, and he had just had a Veterans United agent at his house the day prior to get his house listed. And he called that guy some choice words and said he didn't like him. Apparently they didn't get along, and he wasn't going to hire him. But he was not going to work with me unless I was with Veterans United. And I had no idea what Veterans United was. I talked to my broker about it. She had never heard of it. It's primarily a lending company, but they do have a lot of different avenues. And so I said, "Well, how do I look into it?" I looked into it. I got a call back immediately. And since being with Veterans United, I've known people that have been on the wait list for years to get with Veterans United. They only offer so many spots per zip code or per area. So like in East Texas, there's only 5 people, including myself, that get access to these leads.
Oh, wow.
So I essentially got introduced to Veterans United through Philip. I was able to get in right away. Like within that week, I was a Veterans United agent. So he did list with me. And I was really excited about the opportunity in general. I love working with veterans, and I always have. I've always been, I call myself a patriot. I've always been very patriotic and supportive of our veterans, and, always doing the 20 push-ups a day and, all of these things, fundraisers. But anyway, I had some people that tell me like, "Man, $35 or 35% per transaction, that's a pretty high split. Are you sure you want to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, for starters, some money's more than no money in general. And some clients are more than no clients. This is when I was just getting started." And so it was that mindset of, something's better than nothing. I'm willing to do this. Again, I mean, taking a fight, like when you start fighting, you're not getting these big high dollar fights. I mean, you're fighting for less than $10,000. I mean, you pay a lot out just for the medicals you have to even fight. You're paying a big 35% of your purse just for your medicals to fight. So it was never about that. That mindset was never there for me. How can I learn if I don't have clients? How much better can I be by serving more families? So after I got with them in September, and from September through December, I closed 13 deals. I think 2 were organic, the rest 11 with Veterans United that year. And then I was, goal setting for 2025. Like I said, 2026 was $1 million a month, and I almost backed out of that. I wanted 25 deals in 2025. So, as I started that, I found myself unintentionally paying attention to the price that each family was shopping at. Like, okay, well, this person's pre-approved for 440. So I'm going to give them more attention than I'm giving the person at 240.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, like I said, I mean, subconsciously. And again, I can look at my business in real time and realize what's happening. So in that moment, I realized that I had to change my goal. That's when I came up with the 25 families in 2025 versus I'm going to make $100,000 or I'm going to do this. Like, instead of making it around money, I wanted to give each family that I served the same amount of value as far as getting me to my goal. Every single family counts. It isn't like this one's worth this X much to help me reach my goal. I can't focus my time on them. And so what's funny is the transaction that brought me to EXP and brought me to Cindy, I mean, a very pivotal point in my career, a life-changing point in my career to get with EXP and Cindy and the team and all that, be able to start my own team. It was $100,000 transaction. And it was on the other side was a gal from Cindy's team from EXP. And I had been talking to a few people thinking of switching brokerage. I had already kind of decided I was going to go with EXP, but I didn't necessarily have a connection. I just liked the business, the breakdown, the commission, all of those things with EXP. So we went for our walkthrough, me and my clients, and I noticed that she was with EXP. I saw it on her sign and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. And so that's ultimately, that mindset is what brought me to Cindy and her team and helped me I did 38 transactions in 2025. And so I was, above and beyond over the 25 families that I wanted to serve. I was able to serve 38. And it just seemed like, and it still seems like, majority of my business now, even organic, word of mouth, even if I run into somebody, I ran into a guy at a pizza shop and he had a veteran's hat on and I thanked him for his service. And he was a veteran looking to sell. And so it just seems like my business, really, I just attract veterans, I guess, or veterans are brought to me, even when it's no word of mouth, no marketing, no anything. It's just like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I go to church with you. You want to buy a house? I had no idea you were a veteran. Awesome. I know more about VA loans than anybody in this town. Let's go, so.
That's awesome. That is so good. So I want to just let you think about this for a second. So the people over paychecks, the servant's heart, but also you're running a business and, our businesses come with real financial responsibility. So how do you, balance that servant mindset, which served you extremely well, with the financial reality of running your business?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I think that it always comes back to serving people first. And I've had a few transactions to where we get started on something and the clients end up finding a different route. For example, some clients I've been working with for church, from church, we end up finding an off-market property. We look into it, we find the location. Okay, well, it's in probate and they're going to end up going through an attorney and paying out everybody in cash. And it was just way easier and way better for me to just back out. They could handle it from here. There wasn't necessarily a need for me. So it is a business and you have to get paid, but there's also situations where you always put people first. So in that situation, I wasn't going to sit there and say, hey, well, I'm going to stick around and do nothing because you're working with an attorney and you're going to pay me 3% because we have a buyer's rep. It was like, hey, I'm glad this worked out for you. If there's anything else along the way you need from me, give me a call. But don't worry about the buyer's rep. We're good. You don't owe me anything. I said, let's go out to dinner after you close and we'll celebrate, and that's it. And it is what it is. So my dad was a farmer. He died when I was 15. I remember having a conversation with him one time. He was trying to buy some land that bordered our farm. And we were essentially landlocked with this farm around us. And we had these 40 acres inside. And he thought that he had it locked in. He was getting ready to buy. I think I was in about elementary school at the time. And somebody that he knew and had done business with in the past came in from underneath him and bought the land out from under, probably offered more. I don't know all the details now. And I remember he was just pissed, obviously, as anyone would be. And, we were talking about it, and he takes a few big breaths and he goes, at the end of the day, you're never going to burn any bridges because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I mean, I don't remember exactly how that conversation went, but it was, he was, although that guy had done him wrong, he's not going to hate that guy. He's not going to badmouth that guy. It's, again, service, people over profit. It wasn't that exact scenario there, but that was the example that I had growing up, is like, you're going to do what's right. You're going to be your authentic self. You're going to be genuine. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, you're on to the next one. So.
It's so good. It's so good. And it's, really latching on to those valuable life lessons, and how it just kind of keeps you centered, as we all continue to navigate, this interesting life that we all live. So, Sarah, as we're kind of winding down here, you mentioned the relocation, right? Moving from Washington to Texas, what, twice? Not just one time, got to do it twice.
Yep.
How did living through that process change the way you serve and help your relocation clients? And really, how has that really become kind of a differentiator for you in the business?
Well, I'm not necessarily a relocation specialist. Some people have that or work for a relocation company. I don't have any of that. But again, it's my personal experience. And then especially working with veterans who have relocated so many times. Yeah. Yep. Or I get a lot of clients that are relocating from across the nation, or they're not just moving down the street or something like that. So having that firsthand experience of doing it twice. The first time my husband took a job on very short notice because things weren't panning out in Washington with an opportunity that he thought he had with that company. They ended up from Texas not expanding to Washington State like we had anticipated. And so they called him, and at the same time that they told him that we weren't moving forward in Washington, they told him that we had 48 hours to decide if we wanted to move to Texas. So that's a big decision. You have no job or you move to Texas,
Right.
And so it was to Marble Falls, Texas. My daughter is 15 now, and she was 2 at the time. So wow. It was a big, and he literally, his 6-week training started in like that Monday, and it was like Friday. That's why he had 48 hours. So they paid for him a flight, put him on a flight, and he headed out. I had to get the house cleaned out, get a renter in, live in a motorhome for the remaining of the months. And then when it was time to come down, we had family help us, but we loaded everything up. They didn't give us a moving bonus. We weren't able to afford, and it's very, very expensive. If you've never moved across the country, try it.
Very expensive. Very expensive.
Drain your bank account real quick. So we moved across the country, kind of carpooling all these, and my 2-year-old daughter, we had 3 dogs we were moving down. My grandmother helped me move, which that was an experience in herself. But, so the unknowns, the stress of what you have to do, the stress of just the stress of physically what has to happen, along with the stress of the loan, the realtor, is all this going on. I've lived that. We ended up moving home back to Washington State after about 2.5 years. And it was fantastic. My husband was able to take the new skill set that he had in Texas, that nobody was doing that in Washington because they didn't expand, and his business blew up. It was fantastic. That's awesome. My son was born in Austin, Texas, and he's turning 12 this year. And, but we moved back to Washington. And then during COVID, when everything stopped in Washington, we were in state of emergency for 3 full years. And my husband is a chiropractor. All of a sudden he's needing to force his employees to get vaccinated. He is forced to get vaccinated. Like, we were not going to do all that. We did not do all that. He said, I'd rather shut down my practice than deal with this. Sure. And I said, okay. Me, I had my windows boarded up. It was business as usual at the gym. We were coming in the back, I'm flipping the bird on all accounts, because that's my personality. But my husband is like, obviously he had a lot more on the line. Your medical license is a lot different than a business license, right? So he had a lot more stress from me, or not from me, than I did. So I was still running my business. We were in a strip mall. My MMA gym was here. His chiropractic office was here. So we would, the kids, we'd bounce right back and forth. And so it just got to the point where it was so much stress on him, and our business was obviously going down because it was COVID. Nobody was going out. Nobody was doing anything. So he came home one day and he was like, let's move back to Texas. And I was like, are you serious? I had just got to the point with my gym where I had 7 employees that I had trained up. So they were teaching classes just like I was teaching classes. It was probably at its prime. My gym was. I was at the point where I could step away, which is why I tried to run it remotely. It's because it was finally the point
you had the proof. You had the belief that it could happen. Yeah.
It didn't work. It was bad, but that's okay. Anyway, so he said, let's move to Texas. And that was in 2021. And we were here in June of 2022. So we did it again. We packed everybody up. We bought a house sight unseen. That's 2 houses sight unseen that we've purchased. We sold our house in Washington, and but this will be our we're not going back to Washington at any point. We'll be in Texas for the rest of our days unless we go further south.
Yeah, I was about to say, you probably have found your home. Yes. You guys are locked in.
Yeah.
I love that. Sarah, what would you tell agents that are like, I love that. I want to have that understanding to help, clients that do relocate, but also, I have a passion for, our veterans in the military niche. What are the things that you would tell those agents to understand about serving those clients?
There are so many misconceptions about a VA loan. There's so many agents that on the lending terms on the MLS, they just don't even, I'll look through a house and VA isn't listed as a listing term, and I'll call the agent and have a discussion. And they're like, oh, well, my seller just doesn't want to deal with a VA loan. Well, why not? There's so many misconceptions. So really understand that your VA loan is one of the best loans out there. It is no harder than an FHA loan. It is, it's really not that difficult. There are always ways to negotiate. There are always ways to have repairs done if needed. It's really just about, again, your service to that client, your energy. How far are you willing to go to get this house to close for that client? Because there's always going to be a way that we can make this work, as long as the seller is willing to participate, willing to play ball. And if you have a seller that is not interested in taking a VA loan, really try to understand why. Because if you are unwilling to take a VA loan, you are cutting a large part of the population out of your buyer's pool. And it's not to your advantage. It is way more of your advantage to accept a VA loan, because there are so many veterans in Texas. Texas is such a veteran-friendly state. Mm-hmm. I would not have had the same success if I would have gotten to real estate and got with Veterans United and lived in Washington. Why? Because there's not a lot of veterans running to Washington, okay? They're all running to Texas, so especially East Texas. So just really understand and try to get the idea out of your head that a VA loan is superior or not superior to other loans. That get with a good lender, get a good understanding. There's really nothing, in my opinion, very little that can be. I've had new roofs put on houses. I've had foundation work. I've had new plumbing put in. Little things like siding, that's easy. I mean, I have right now one where the buyers were willing to put in a new septic system, because you can make that work financially for both parties, as long as it appraises, of course. But there's really nothing that can be done. And at the end of the day, your seller is providing a home to somebody who signed up to die for you.
Yeah.
That person literally signed that they would go and lose their life for your freedoms. How are you going to tell me that you're not willing to sell them your house? I mean, I get fired up. We're not going to get fired up about it. We're going to take
I love it.
Literally. Anyway, so yeah, just be more educated. And then if you would like to get VA clients, start visiting your local VA, what are those?
You got your VA centers, you've got your, the VFWs, you've got just
That's what I was thinking of.
yeah.
Yep.
Just where are they, right?
Yeah.
Where are our veterans hanging out?
Start thanking veterans in Walmart that have a veterans, a hat on that said, just start making a difference in your community with veterans, and then you'll put yourself out there and you'll start attracting veterans.
Yeah. Sarah, I mean, absolutely remarkable what you've done in a short period of time. And, just it's really amazing to see you on the up. And it's great. It's like, what are you talking about? I have a 20-year career. Like, this is like my second career on the way up. What are you talking about? I was like, yeah, you definitely are on the way up. And it's really awesome to see. And your energy and leadership style is very, very contagious. And it's going to be fun to revisit this conversation as we have you back on in the future to just see the growth, and it's going to be fast. So my 2 cents to you is buckle up, because you're in for a fun ride for sure.
Well, thank you. I sincerely appreciate the time being on your show. I appreciate all of your advice, and I'm just looking forward to it.
Yeah. How can people get connected with you?
They can find me on Instagram or Facebook, and please don't ask me my handle because I don't even know what it is, but you can find me, Sarah Howell, at Sarah Howell, I think. Anyway, Sarah May Howell, I'm out there. You can find me.
Awesome. Sarah, thank you. And guys, get connected, be paying attention to Sarah, and definitely going to be an awesome ride for sure.
Thanks.
Awesome. We'll see you guys. Thanks, Sarah.